On a quiet Wednesday night in Toledo, Ohio, just past 11:00 p.m., the streets were nearly deserted, save for the occasional shift worker trudging home or a lone vehicle cutting through the dark. Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace was behind the wheel of her government-issued black SUV, its windows slightly tinted, understated yet professional, much like the woman driving it. She was returning from a base meeting 2 hours south, her mind already drifting toward home as the hum of the tires against the pavement kept a steady rhythm. Adrienne wasn't speeding, wasn't weaving, wasn't doing anything to draw attention. Her focus was on the road ahead, her thoughts on the work she'd left behind and the bed waiting for her. But Sergeant Daniel Mercer, parked in his cruiser off Reynolds Road, saw something else. He was restless, sipping lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup, scrolling aimlessly through his phone. The night shift had been painfully slow. No calls, no action, just the monotony of waiting. Then he spotted her SUV, unfamiliar in his territory. Tossing the cup onto the passenger seat, he flipped on his lights and pulled out, the red and blue flashing in Adrienne's rearview mirror before she even registered the cruiser behind her. She slowed, signaled, and eased onto the shoulder, her movements deliberate, trained. She was calm, composed, exactly as her years in the military had taught her to be. Mercer slammed his car door shut with a force that echoed in the quiet night. Adrienne watched in her side mirror as he approached, tall and broad, his hand already resting on his holster, a flashlight gripped tightly in the other. He didn't go to the passenger window as protocol often dictated. Instead, he came straight to hers. "License and registration," he barked, no greeting, no preamble. His voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed without question. Adrienne kept her hands visible, rolling the window halfway down. "Officer, may I ask why I'm being stopped?" Her tone was even, professional. Mercer squinted, shining the flashlight directly into her face, the beam harsh against her eyes. "You were drifting between lanes, didn't signal, looked like you might have been under the influence." His words were clipped, accusatory. Adrienne raised an eyebrow, her expression steady. "I wasn't. License and registration," he repeated louder now, his patience already fraying. She didn't argue. Moving slowly, deliberately, she reached into the glove box, retrieving her documents. As she handed them over, she added, "This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee." Mercer glanced at her ID, his eyes narrowing, but he said nothing for a moment. Then a small smirk tugged at his lips. "You military?" "Yes. Doesn't mean you're above the law." His tone sharpened, carrying an edge of challenge. "I never said I was," Adrienne replied, her voice still calm but firm. "Step out of the vehicle for me." His words were more command than request. Adrienne blinked, her jaw tightening imperceptibly. "Excuse me?" I said. "Step out of the car." "I'm conducting a sobriety check." "On what grounds?" "I've complied. I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." Mercer took a step closer, his posture looming. "Now you're refusing a lawful order." Adrienne didn't move. "No, I'm asking for clarification." He didn't like that. Without waiting for her response, he opened her door himself. "I need you to exit the vehicle, now." That was when Adrienne, still calm, still measured, reached for her phone, activated the camera, and hit record. "Just so we're clear," she said, her voice steady as steel, "this interaction is being documented." Mercer's eyes flicked to the phone, and for the first time, a sliver of hesitation crossed his face. But his ego was louder than his doubt. "Out of the car," he repeated, his tone unwavering. Adrienne stepped out, her posture straight, not defiant, but resolute. Even in civilian clothes, she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had faced far worse than a roadside power play. Mercer looked at her, really looked, and for a fleeting moment, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What am I dealing with here?" But he ignored it. Instead, he proceeded with a field sobriety test, making her walk a straight line, under the flickering streetlights as if she were some reckless driver on a Saturday night bender. She performed flawlessly, no slurring, no stumbling, no hesitation. Still, he wrote her a citation for failure to maintain a lane. Adrienne took the ticket without a word, her eyes locking onto his for a moment, a look that said more than any argument could. She got back in her SUV and drove off into the night. But Mercer had no idea that the ticket and the encounter would resurface in a courtroom where it would unravel everything he thought he knew about control. Sergeant Daniel Mercer wasn't a rookie. 15 years on the Toledo police force had etched deep lines into his face and deeper ones into his sense of self. He'd seen it all: neighborhood standoffs, messy traffic accidents, domestic disputes that turned ugly. He had a reputation, the kind that made younger officers straighten up when he entered the room. Mercer relished it. To him, the badge meant authority, finality, control. He didn't ask questions. He gave orders. Teenagers mouthing off, drivers asking too many questions. It didn't matter. He never backed down, never apologized. His precinct on Toledo's west side knew what they had: a cop who'd file the paperwork, show up on time, and never hesitate. But they also knew he could be rough, quick to escalate, sharp with his tone. No one challenged him, not really. Not until that night. Back at the station, Mercer barely mentioned the stop. He logged the citation in the system: failure to maintain lane, possible signs of impairment, no arrest made, and tossed his body cam into the charging dock like it was just another night. The footage sat untouched for 2 days, unremarkable in his mind. In the break room, he joked about it with Officer Diaz, leaning back in a chair with a bag of chips. "Woman tried to pull rank on me," he said, smirking. "Flashed her government ID like that was supposed to impress me." Diaz raised a brow, pausing mid-bite. "Wait, she was military?" Mercer shrugged. "So she says. Some fed with an attitude. What was her name?" He popped a chip into his mouth. "Wallace. Adrienne Wallace." Diaz's face shifted, a flicker of recognition. "You mean Lieutenant Colonel Wallace?" Mercer paused, the chip halfway to his mouth. "How would you know that?" "She gave a lecture at the academy last year," Diaz said slowly. "She's not just military. She's high, up, runs logistics out of Fort Wayne. Bronze Star. 2 deployments. She's legit." Mercer scoffed, waving it off. "Don't care who she is. On the road, I'm the authority." But Diaz's tone lingered, that small note of caution, of respect, chipping at the edges of Mercer's usual armor. Still, he didn't go back and watch the footage. He didn't think twice about the ticket. In his mind, it was done. Buried. It wasn't. By the next morning, Adrienne had filed a formal complaint, not just with the Toledo Police Department's internal affairs, but with the Office of the Inspector General. The video she'd recorded on her phone was already in the hands of her legal team, and a copy was quietly making its way through the military chain of command. Mercer didn't know any of this yet. He was back in his routine, responding to minor calls, barking orders during traffic stops, carrying himself like a man untouchable by consequences. For years he had been. The system had protected him. Supervisors looked the other way, union reps squashed complaints, and Mercer had come to believe the rules didn't apply to him the way they did to everyone else. But Adrienne Wallace wasn't like everyone else. She wasn't afraid, didn't yell, didn't crumble. She documented everything, followed protocol, made one precise phone call to the right office, and backed it all with evidence. Mercer didn't see it coming until an envelope hit his desk, marked Formal Inquiry. Adrienne wasn't the type to make noise for no reason. She wasn't dramatic, wasn't confrontational. After 22 years in uniform, 2 tours overseas, and enough close calls to break most people, she'd learned to pick her battles. But this wasn't just about her. It was about every young soldier she mentored, every civilian she'd seen mistreated, every woman, especially every black woman, who'd been forced to swallow their pride to avoid escalation. She was done with that. Back at her office in Naudor, Fort Wayne, Indiana. The morning after the stop, Adrienne sat staring at her computer screen. She hadn't slept much, not out of anger, though she felt it, but because the encounter kept replaying in her mind. The way Mercer talked to her like she was nothing, the way his hand hovered over his holster, the way he seemed to bait her into reacting. She knew the script, knew how quickly things could have gone wrong even with her camera rolling. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, poked his head in. "You good, ma'am?" Adrienne looked up, her expression calm but focused. "No, but I'm handling it." He stepped inside, closing the door. "I saw the footage. You want me to loop in the base attorney?" "Already done," she said. Daniels hesitated. "You sure you want to go public with it?" Adrienne leaned back in her chair. "I'm not looking for headlines. I'm looking for accountability." And she meant it. Her career was built on discipline, integrity, and decisions that affected lives. She'd commanded convoys through hostile terrain, coordinated relief efforts after natural disasters, and managed logistics across 4 continents. Her rank wasn't just a title. It was earned through years of proving herself under pressure. But none of that had mattered to Mercer. To him, she was just another driver who didn't move fast enough, didn't speak the way he wanted, didn't submit. What gnawed at her wasn't just how he treated her. It was how comfortable he seemed doing it. So she made calls, first to the Judge Advocate General's office, then to the Inspector General. She attached the footage, filed the complaint, and let the facts speak for themselves. No embellishment, no drama. By the end of the week, the story was circulating in military legal circles. It hadn't hit the media yet, but Mercer's name was now tied to an internal investigation. The Toledo Police Department's legal counsel was notified, and Adrienne kept working, kept showing up, mentioning it only when asked. Behind the scenes, though, she was preparing. Her lawyer suggested the stop might have violated federal policy, given her government status and the lack of probable cause. If it came to it, they'd go to court. Adrienne didn't flinch at the prospect. She welcomed it. Mercer, meanwhile, still believed it would blow over. That belief held until the envelope arrived. It was thin, unassuming, with his name typed on the front, and a return address from the Lucas County Civil Court. He tore it open in the parking lot, half distracted, expecting a routine summons or memo. Instead, it was a notice to appear. A formal civil rights complaint had been filed by Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, charging him with violating her constitutional rights during a traffic stop, unlawful detainment, intimidation, abuse of authority. Mercer stared at the paper, then laughed, a hollow sound. "No way," he muttered. "No way this sticks." But when he stepped back into the station, the air was different. His captain, Officer Reardon, called him into the office. "Door shut, blinds pulled." "Dan," Reardon started, "we need to talk." Mercer sat, arms crossed. "About what? The lady from the other night? She's trying to play victim." Reardon didn't smile. "She's not playing anything. Do you even know who she is?" "I don't care who she is. She got pulled over, acted smug, and now she's mad I didn't kiss her shoes." Reardon leaned forward. "She's not just some random motorist. She's a lieutenant colonel, a combat veteran. Her record's spotless. Her connections are deep, and she's got the whole thing on tape, from 2 angles. Yours and hers." Mercer scoffed. "So what? We just roll over, say sorry because she's got some stripes?" "No. But we don't pretend this is nothing either. You're going to court. And if this gets out, and it will, it's going to blow up." Mercer bit his lip, for once without a quick retort. The notice said the court date was 3 weeks out. In the meantime, word spread through the department. Whispers in the locker room, sideways glances in the hallway. No one said anything to his face, but Mercer felt the shift. He wasn't the untouchable wolf anymore. He was bleeding, and the pack could smell it. Adrienne prepared differently. She didn't hold press conferences or seek attention. She met quietly with her legal team, reviewed every frame of the footage, and documented her experience with precision. She was calm, collected, relentless. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat across from her in a small office. "You sure you want to do this in court? It's public. It'll follow you." Adrienne nodded. "Good. Let it." Price paused. "Most people would have let it go." "I've let too much go already," Adrienne said. "This isn't just about me." She wasn't after a payout. She wanted a public record, a precedent, something to show that power didn't excuse bad behavior, and silence wasn't the only option. She was standing up for every person who'd been talked down to, dismissed, or bullied behind flashing lights and a badge. When the court date arrived, Adrienne didn't walk in quietly. She wore her full service uniform, badges, medals, her rank clear on her chest. She wanted the jury to see her not just as the woman in the car that night, but as a human being who'd served her country, respected the law, and expected the same in return. Mercer was already seated when she entered. He turned, saw the uniform, and his smirk faltered for the first time. The courtroom was packed, not with reporters, not yet, but with officers from both the Toledo precinct and Fort Wayne's military base. Adrienne's peers sat in silent support, some in uniform, others in business attire, alongside civilians unaware of the case's deeper significance. To some, it was just a traffic stop gone wrong. To Adrienne, it was the boiling point of something much larger. When she was called to the stand, Adrienne stood, adjusted her collar, and walked forward with the same discipline she'd used leading convoys through danger zones. Every eye was on her. Her ribbons caught the light, her posture commanding respect, not for how she looked, but for who she was. The judge, Cynthia Morales, cleared her throat. "Colonel Wallace, thank you for your service. You may proceed." Delaney. Price stepped forward. "Lieutenant Colonel, could you describe the night of January 17th? Adrienne spoke plainly. "I was driving back from a meeting at the Indiana Guard Reserve around 11:15 p.m. I was pulled over by Officer Mercer. There was no erratic driving, no signs of intoxication. I was compliant. I asked reasonable questions. He responded with aggression." Her voice stayed steady, no edge, just truth. "He demanded I exit the vehicle without explanation. When I asked why, he repeated the demand, louder. At that point, I turned on my phone to record the rest of the stop." Price nodded. "Did you ever refuse a lawful order?" "No." "Did you resist in any way?" "No." "Did you identify yourself?" "Yes. I informed him I was a federal employee and that I was driving a government vehicle." The courtroom was silent. No coughing, no rustling, just her voice and the scratch of pens on paper. Then came the playback. First, Adrienne's phone footage, steady and clear. Then Mercer's body cam, showing his tone, his posture, his hand hovering near his weapon even when she was fully cooperative, the unnecessary field test, the dismissive attitude when she passed. The jury didn't speak, but the air shifted. Cross-examination followed. Mercer's attorney, Charles Brenner, approached with a careful tone. "Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, with all due respect, is it possible Officer Mercer was simply following protocol?" Adrienne didn't blink. "No." "Is it possible he was concerned for your safety or the safety of others?" "I was driving within the lines. I was sober. I was not aggressive. There was no safety concern." And yet you recorded the stop. Why? Because I've lived long enough to know silence isn't protection. I wanted an accurate record of what happened. Brenner nodded slowly. So you don't believe officers should have discretion? During stops? Adrian looked at him. I believe discretion must be paired with discipline. That badge isn't a free pass, it's a responsibility. The line landed. Even the judge paused before moving on. Then it was Mercer's turn. He didn't testify but watched as the footage played again, frame by frame. Every pause, every clipped response, every moment he treated her like she wasn't human. The prosecutor leaned in. Sergeant Mercer, why did you ask her to exit the vehicle? Mercer stiffened. She looked evasive. Did she disobey any of your commands? She questioned me. Is that illegal? Mercer hesitated. No. Did she raise her voice? Make threats? No. So what made you escalate the stop? No answer. Sergeant Mercer, were you aware she was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army? Not at the time. And if you had known? Mercer's voice dropped. I probably would have handled it differently. The room went quiet. It wasn't regret, but it was a crack in his armor, a slip of honesty. That night, Mercer hadn't seen a person. He'd seen someone who didn't move fast enough, didn't speak the way he liked, didn't submit. Now, with her rank laid bare, the courtroom saw it too. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courthouse was quieter. No military uniforms, no off-duty officers, just Adrian, her lawyer, and a few curious civilians. Mercer sat with his attorney, hands clasped, his jaw twitching slightly. Judge Morales shuffled her papers. In the matter of Wallace versus Mercer, she began, the jury has found in favor of the plaintiff. Mercer shifted. Adrian stayed, still. The court recognizes a violation of constitutional rights during an unlawful stop and detainment. Furthermore, the actions taken by Sergeant Mercer were not aligned with department policy or basic expectations of professional conduct. No one clapped, no gasps, just the weight of consequence. Mercer's attorney whispered, "We'll appeal," but his tone lacked conviction. The judge continued. While no criminal charges will be filed at this time, the plaintiff is entitled to damages totaling $35,000. This decision will remain on permanent public record. Furthermore, this ruling will be forwarded to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for internal review and policy evaluation. Adrian didn't smile or celebrate. She nodded once to herself. She'd done what she came to do. Outside the courthouse, reporters had started to gather. Not a swarm, just a few local outlets. Mercer paced near the steps, shielding his face with a folder as cameras clicked. He didn't speak, didn't make a statement, just drove off. Inside, Adrienne checked her phone. Verdict in your favor. Case closed. Delaney caught up to her. You could have asked for more. Adrienne shook her head. It was never about the money. You think it'll change anything? Delaney asked. Adrian glanced at the glass doors. I don't know, but maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll think twice. A week later, Mercer was placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. Rumors swirled. Some said he'd be reassigned, others that his career was over. His shield, once impenetrable, was cracked, and everyone could see it. At Fort Wayne, Adrian returned to her duties as if nothing had happened. She didn't seek interviews or accolades. She had work to do, soldiers to train, missions to manage. But within her command, the message was clear. You don't need to shout to demand respect, and you don't need to break to prove you've been wronged. Sometimes, the quietest stance speaks the loudest. 2 months later, Adrian stood before a room of young recruits at Fort Wayne, most fresh in their uniforms, eager to serve. She wasn't there to talk logistics or combat strategy. She was there to talk about leadership. "How many of you think a uniform automatically earns you respect?" she asked. A few hands went up, some confident, some tentative. She nodded. "I understand why you'd think that. But here's the truth. Respect isn't owed, it's proven. Every day, every choice." She paused. "Same goes for power. The badge, the rank, the authority, it's not a shield. It's a weight. If you can't carry it with discipline, you don't deserve it." A recruit in the back leaned forward, eyes locked. Adrienne continued. "When I was stopped by an officer who forgot that truth, I could have yelled, I could have panicked, I could have let it slide." She scanned the room. "I didn't. I documented it. I filed. I showed up in court. I told the truth." A long pause. "That officer thought his badge made him untouchable, until he saw my rank, not just on my uniform, but in how I carried myself. That's the difference. That's leadership." The room stayed quiet, not from disinterest, but from the weight of her words. Adrienne closed her folder. "Lead with character. Serve with integrity. Never forget, you don't just represent the uniform. You represent everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after." She stepped down, not for applause, not for thanks, but because the work was done. Her story wasn't just a moment, it was a reminder. Authority without accountability is weakness disguised as strength. Speak up, stand firm, and when you see wrong, don't turn away. Silence comforts the guilty. Courage protects the rest.